Excitement and adventure are around every corner this summer at your library. Create your own literary wonderland at home. Immerse yourself in our never-ending online library. Learn new skills, explore virtual events, and connect with your community in a whole new way. Starting May 18th, the Prince George's County Memorial Library System and the Washington Nationals bring summer at your library to you. Hit a home run this summer and register today.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to STEM at Home, our live virtual STEM activities series. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to STEM at Home. My name is Miss Sarah, and I am a librarian with the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. And today we're going to be doing one of my very favorite things in the whole wide world. We're going to be baking, and we're going to be baking cookies. We're going to be making these delicious peanut butter cookies today. Now, you might see that they look a little different from your usual peanut butter cookies. They don't have the little fork lines on the top. But I'll tell you what, these are probably the best peanut butter cookies I've ever eaten in my entire life. They are a very famous online recipe that's got kind of a cult following over the years from a site called Ovenly. I will be sure to share the link in this video so that you can see the recipe and follow along. But you're never going to want to make any other peanut butter cookies ever again. So let's do it.
Pause the video now so you can review the recipe and make sure you have all of your ingredients ready to go.
You can also go check it out over at oven.ly/recipes/salted-peanut-butter. One of the best things about this recipe, and I think the reason why it's become so popular on the internet over the years, is that it calls for so few ingredients. Just 5 ingredients, and most of these things you probably already have in your pantry and fridge. So first we have 2 eggs. The recipe recommends that we have those at room temperature, so you can just leave those out on the counter for like an hour or so. Then we've got our vanilla extract. We have 1 3/4 cup of tightly packed brown sugar. That means when you go to measure it out into the bowl, make sure you get all the brown sugar you possibly can into those measuring cups. Really pack them tight. The cat assistant is optional, but recommended. Now, the recipe recommends light brown sugar, but in the spirit of using what we have on hand, I'm using dark brown sugar today. For those of you who don't know, the difference between light and dark brown sugar is just the amount of molasses that's added to it. So dark brown sugar has a richer, deeper flavor. In this case, I find it makes a very fine substitute for the light brown sugar. Then we have our peanut butter, creamy peanut butter. The recipe recommends Skippy brand. They find that to be the best. But again, in the spirit of using exactly what we have on hand, I'm just using my store brand peanut butter. Whatever you have will work just fine. But if you do have Skippy, you'll have to try it out. Let me know what you think. And then finally, we have our coarse sea salt. All right, let's get started. So our first step was to preheat our oven to 350 degrees, and I just took care of that off camera. So next, we're gonna start getting these ingredients all together. Let's move a few things out of the way here, because the first thing we're going to do is whisk our eggs into our brown sugar. Now, I have been cooking and baking for years and years and years, and I am still really terrible at cracking eggs. So you'll just have to forgive me for this, but here we go. Give it a little tap, tap, tap. Look at that. Not too bad. Must have been the camera, huh? One more time. Tap, 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 and crack. All right. Whoops! And there goes a shell on the floor. We clean as we go, right, friends? Okay. Now I'm gonna just take a fork and break up these yolks so they're a little easier to incorporate. Give them just a little swishy swish, and then whisk. Move that fork to the side. I find that this makes it a lot easier for me to incorporate the eggs into the sugar if they've already gotten a little swishy swish. Go in and get my whisk. Pour. Make sure we get all that eggy goodness. Put that off to the side. And give it a little whisk. This is a great step for my little friends to help with because you get to practice all that mixing. Makes a fun sound. You can challenge your grown-ups. Who can whisk faster? So you can see already, after we've incorporated some air, it gets so nice and smooth and light. This will be the base for our dough. I always like to give it another swishy swish just for good measure. Doop, doop, doop. All right, let's see. Now they're asking me to add my vanilla extract. Half a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now here's my little secret for baking. I always, always, always add more vanilla than the recipe calls for. And it always, always, always turns out great. I also just use the cap as an approximate measure. I have a bajillion teaspoons in here, but so much easier, one less dish to wash. So we're gonna call this Miss Sarah's out of vanilla extract. Again, use what you got. Maybe I'll throw in a little extra off camera. Choo-choo-choo, and then give it another swishy, 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 swish. All right. Our next step is to add the peanut butter. 1 3/4 cups of our smooth peanut butter. So equal parts brown sugar and peanut butter. This is where it gets fun and sticky and messy because, you know, there aren't a lot of easy ways to measure peanut butter, but we do what we can. Let's see. Bring out my little teeny rubber spatula. Give it a little stir. All right, we had some technical difficulties there. We lost a little bit of footage, but all I did was measure out 1 3/4 cup of my creamy peanut butter and mix it into my dough base. And I just had a little bit of fun making it go. So here we go, back to the recipe. You will find that as you start to mix your ingredients together with your spatula, really work them together, there's some chemistry magic that takes place. And you can see that suddenly it's starting to look a whole lot more like the consistency of a cookie dough. Can you see that? Look at that. Almost like very soft Play-Doh too. So you know when you've reached that stage, you've done it right. So again, this is where my friends can help out. Show off how strong you are, show off those muscles, and mix up that dough. Oh man, it smells so good. Now the next thing I'm gonna do, because I find that my dough is still a little soft and gooey, I'm gonna stick this in the fridge for about 10 to 15 minutes. And I'll come check in with you after that's chilled. All right, we are back, and these are the next tools that we will need. I have my cookie sheet, and you can either prepare this with baking spray or parchment paper. I have my Sil-Pat. This is a really nice silicone mat that I use to make sure that my cookies don't stick to my cookie sheet. It's infinitely reusable. I've had it for 10 years. I love it. So if you want to get fancy, Sil-Pat's the way to go. And then here's where I get fancy again. I've got my digital scale here. You do not need a digital scale in your kitchen, but I love it and I use it all the time. And I especially like to use it for cookies because I find that when the cookies are exactly the same size, they cook nice and evenly, they're perfect. Every cookie is just as good as the last. But you can also go old school, take a couple tablespoons, scoop out your dough, bloop, 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 bloop. That's perfectly fine too. So let's get these cookies on the pan. We've got our cookie dough that's been chilling in the fridge for a few minutes. We've got our pan, we've got our spoons. Let's make some cookies. Now this dough will get you approximately 12 cookies. So if I'm remembering correctly, let's get my scale going. I like to do grams because I'm extra like that. Let's go for 50 grams. So measure out my cookie, measure it out however you prefer, make it into a little ball, pop it on your tray. Now you're gonna see they're still really gooey, so they will spread a little bit, but we've got a trick for that in just a moment. Oh, man. Don't you love it when it comes out perfectly the first time? I will tell you, if you're following along at home without a scale, 50 grams is like a heaping, you know what, let's call that 2 tablespoons. Because see, I scoop it up, perfection. So, as you can see, I severely underestimated the capacity of my dough the first time around. So I went back and evened them out and added, I would say probably another 15 grams per cookie, if you're following along that carefully at home. So these ginormous, gooey balls of deliciousness, we're at 65 grams. So let's put them back together into roughly cookie shape. Now, especially on a warm day like today, in a warm kitchen, these cookies will start to spread a little bit because they don't really have any binding agent. I mean, the eggs are a binding agent, but not in the way that flour is. So in order to keep them from getting too gooey and all over the place and losing their shape, we're gonna pop them in the freezer for about 15 minutes. So there we go. And it's okay that I'm close to the edge of the silpat because when they go into the oven, especially after having been in the freezer, they don't spread all that much. So there we go. 12 peanut butter cookies going in the freezer. All right, here's where the magic happens. My cookies have been resting in the freezer for a few minutes. And now I've got my coarse sea salt. And coarse it is. It almost feels like gravel. But this is what makes these peanut butter cookies just over the top, insanely delicious. Now, of course, if for health reasons you wanna watch your sodium, maybe you skip this step, but I highly recommend, if you can, give it a try. So we're gonna pinch a little bit of salt in our fingers, sprinkle it on the cookie. I even like to give it just a little tap, tap, tap to make sure it really sticks. Sprinkle, tap, tap, tap. Sprinkle, tap, tap, tap. Right, there we go. Now I know I said that the salt feels like gravel, but I promise when you go to eat it, it doesn't feel like gravel in your mouth. That was just a silly thing I said. It just makes the cookies taste so, so good. So into the oven they go for, 20 to 22 minutes. Here we go. These are our cookies after they have been in the oven for 20 minutes. This batch only took 20 minutes, but everybody's oven and everybody's kitchen is a little bit different, so just watch carefully for when they're done. You'll see that they're just that gorgeous, it looks a little darker in this light, but gorgeous golden brown on the bottom. And when you break into it, soft, ooey gooey. Oh, so good. So after they sat on the cookie sheet to cool for about 5 minutes. I put them on the cooling rack to finish cooling. And honestly, they are not going to finish cooling before I put them all in my tummy.
Excitement and adventure are around every corner this summer at your library. Create your own literary wonderland at home. Immerse yourself in our never-ending online library. Learn new skills, explore virtual events, and connect with your community in a whole new way. Starting May 18th, the Prince George's County